Good morning, everybody. Happy 5th of July. I hope you had a wonderful 4th. Hope you and your family were able to spend time, celebrate America's birthday. I am out on my morning walk. I got out a little bit late today. I had a bunch of stuff I had to do this morning. And I'm walking at one of my favorite places. I'm walking at Bataquitos Lagoon. It's over my shoulder behind the golf course and to my left. And of course, the lagoon flows into the Pacific Ocean, which is about, as a bird flies, maybe 2 miles from here, mile and a half. And I'm where I'm actually going live from is Aviara Golf Course, which is actually the Park Hyatt, Aviara Park Hyatt, and I'm at the golf course. And this is a exquisite golf course. It's one of my favorite courses ever. It's like playing. If Disneyland made a golf course, this is the course that they would make. And over my right shoulder is the 18th hole. And it is a fantastic hole. It's actually, I think it's the most difficult or second most difficult, hole in the course. And you may or may not be able to see the large pond that's over my left-hand shoulder that lines the course. Many of my golf balls are in that pond. Now, in my defense, I usually only play this course at twilight, and so I'm playing this hole in the dark. And apparently there's a magnet for my balls to that pond. And so I rarely actually score a car to score on the 18th hole. I'm looking forward to touching on a couple things today. Staying somewhat light, feels like a holiday. I'm gonna share some data from the recent article from Inman, and the article is Poacher's Playbook: How to Recruit Agents from Indies and Franchises. Now, I'm not going to talk about the strategies on how to poach an agent. That's not what interested me. What interested me is some of the data that they shared, that they garnered from a recent survey of 1,000 agents. So I'm going to share the results of that. I got a lot of insights in it. If you're a loan officer, kind of help you understand what your agents are thinking. If you're a real estate agent, you kind of understand what your peers are thinking. I think it'll be useful for everyone. And then I'm going to talk in my little live session here with a little talk on adaptability. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's get to the data. So as I mentioned, this is 1,000 respondents to it's an Intel survey. And here's some of the interesting things. And I'll tell you, I'm going to break the data into 3 buckets. Into franchise, so real estate agents that work for franchises, real estate agents that work for small independents, and then real estate agents that work for the larger public independents. And the larger public independents are like EXP, Compass, Real. Now, I'm going to cover the public independents at the end. So in the beginning, I'm going to compare data between franchise and small indies, okay? And so with how many agents have considered switching brokerages in the past 12 months, right? The number of agents, percentage of agents that are considering changing brokerages or companies in the next 12 months. For franchise agents, about 15% of them are considering hopping, franchises or hopping platforms. Only 8% of agents that work for indies are thinking about moving. So interesting. Agents at franchises are a little bit more likely, about twice as likely to move versus ones at indie. Kind of interesting. And then, but agents at independent real estate offices are more likely considering of leaving the business. And this is a surprising number. 1/3 of real estate agents that work at independent real estate companies have considered leaving the business in the last 12 months. So 33%. And that compares to franchise, which is also a high number, 27%. So about a little over a quarter of agents that work for national franchises have considered getting out of the business, and 1/3 of agents that work for indies have done the same. So really interesting. So franchise agents are more likely to move this year, and indie agents are more likely to leave the business. But pretty close. What I also found interesting is how agents at different models, and it kind of makes sense, but what value props attract them, right? And so when it comes to cultural fit, it's really important for agents that work at an independent brokerage, right? It's 36% say the cultural fit is the most important reason they work there, 36% of agents, right? We're only 26% of agents that work for a franchise put cultural fit as the #1 priority, so considerably less. And that kind of makes sense, right? Indy kind of has that cultural feel. And then this totally makes sense. Conversely, 30% of real estate agents that work for franchises think the consumer's perception of the company and the company's brand is the number one, their top thing, right? But with indies, they don't really, not surprisingly, they're not at the indie shop for, the consumer's perception of the brand or the brand strength. Only 19% of agents at an independent shop put brand or consumer recognition as a priority, where, as I said, 30% of the franchises. Next, also not surprising, but this is going to come up in a minute, about 19% of the real estate agents at franchises, at the franchise brokerages, put technology and education as their top priority. So 19%, right? 1 out of 5. But only 11% of agents that work at indie shops put technology, right? And so you're starting to see a little trend here, which I'll summarize in a second. And then getting to commission splits, really interesting. Agents that work for a national franchise, brokerage, right, tend to make less commission. On average, half of them earn between 70 and 79% commission, right? And that's the lowest of the 3 models. In fact, they're also far less likely, if you work for a franchise, to have a commission split greater than 90%. It's very unlikely, right? And then 31% of agents, and this is self-reported, but agents that worked at franchises, 31% had splits less than 80%. Really, really interesting. And only 17% of agents that work at franchises said commissions were a top priority. So, if you're working a franchise, you're very much about the brand recognition, technology, education. You're not, as concerned, although it's important, about culture. You're not as concerned about commission, right? Really interesting. But if an indie, the difference is, 24% had an 80% split, indies, 24% had a sub 80 split, right? So remember, at franchises, it was 31% had sub 80, but indies only 24%. And in fact, 24% of agents at independent shops said commission was their top priority, right? And it didn't even really hit as a priority for franchise agents. So you see people that work at indie, right? They're all about the culture. They're about their comp. They're not as into tech. They don't care as much about the brand. And it kind of makes sense for what we know about real estate models, right? Kind of following the way we think. Now, what does it all mean? Well, here's where you kind of get the scorecard. Agents that worked at franchises, 24% of the agents that worked at franchises did at least 20 transactions in the previous 12 months, right? So about 24%, about 1 in 4 did more than 20 transactions. And 1 in 5 did fewer than 5. So kind of interesting, right? Top, bottom. 24% did more than 20, 20% did less than 5. How's this compared to indie? Only 17% of real estate agents at independent shops did more than 20 transactions in the past 12 months. So that's considerably less, right? Considerably. It's 24% versus 17. And 32% of agents at indie shops did less than 5. So it's kind of funny, if you're an independent agent, based on these survey results, you tend to do a little less business. You're more focused on making more money, higher commissions on every business. You're focused about your culture, and so kind of the differences. Now, there's a third model that's emerging in the real estate industry, and it's new, and that's called the independent publics. Like they don't really offer franchises. Sorry about the background noise. They don't offer franchises. They're just one big national company, Compass, EXP, Real, right? And so they're creating, a new segment in the business, and they account for about one out of 7 agents right now. So 1 out of 7 agents, but they operate most like a franchise. So I am going to, they're blowing the pass behind me. And by the way, I'm right off the first tee box. There's a gazillion people lined up to go golf. I'm a jealous one. But so I'm going to compare the public indie model to a franchise model because it's closest to that. Here's some of the interesting things about the public indies. Nearly half of the agents at a publicly traded independent real estate company, about half of them are around an 80-20 split. Double what it is for franchises, right? So if you work for a public indie, you're very much about commission, very, very much about commission, right? And then 26% valued technology and education. And that's really going to be the deal, man. If you work at a public indie, you want top comp, you want top technology, top training. And really, honestly, that's all you care about, for the most part. Because only 23% said culture was a priority. 3 out of 4 could care. It's not a priority. Just give me top comp, great technology. That's what I want, and let me run, right? Interesting, this is really interesting. Only 4% of real estate agents at an independent public were concerned about what the NAR lawsuit and settlement was a top priority. Only 4%. Like, not much. They're like, we're going to figure it out. We don't care, right? Where their counterparts at franchises, for 11% it was a top priority, and at the small independents, 9%. So, if you work at a public independent, you don't care. You're just going to march on, right? But, this is another interesting fact. You're really starting to see a delineation on agent type by these 3 different models, right? And I really apologize, but the person who's doing a very dutiful job blowing the path behind me. But 70% of agents at independent public companies are very concerned about the market. And when I say concerned about the market, they're concerned about inventory, about affordability, and about interest rates, right? So we're seeing a picture. The independent publics, they want as much comp as possible. They want great technology. They want great training. And they're not concerned about the lawsuit. They're going to figure it out, but they are concerned about the market, right? And just, comparatively, and I say only, but 76% of real estate agents, which is a lot, 62% of real estate agents at franchises are worried about a market. So that's not an insignificant amount. So, pretty interesting data. I posted this on my LinkedIn today. I posted the article, I posted the same summary you just heard me read on my LinkedIn, and I put a link to the article, to the Inman article, and I believe this article is not behind a paywall. They actually published this article originally on June 24th that was behind the paywall, and then today they released it to the public. So anybody can go get it. Super interesting. If I was a loan officer, I would meet with my real estate agent and says, hey, does this reflect you? And what are your insights? Now, I'm actually going live here at the golf course in the lagoon, and the guy blowing the leaves off the path. But I'm going here because I wanted to talk about adaptability. Because I noticed a really interesting phenomenon here. I live close to I live right off the edge of the lagoon, and when Glenn and I are here in San Diego, I frequently do my walks in the lagoon. It's about 3.5 miles. It's not, you can't go to Circle, it's tip to tip. It's about 3.5 miles. If you add on some other stuff, you can get it up to 7 miles. In fact, you can walk the beach back from here. And so I come here a lot. And a couple of years ago, I saw a really interesting thing, and it happened several times. And I saw a couple of coyotes hunting in the tide pool, right? So when the tide goes out, the water goes down, fish get trapped in little pockets of water, right, as the tide recedes. And here it recedes quite a bit sometimes, depending on the season. And I watched these two, and I watched them do it for 3 or 4 days. And I watched these 2 coyotes fish in the tide pools. And I go, I didn't even know that coyotes ate fish. Like, if I didn't see with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. And they were very crafty, by the way. They knew where all the little, pockets of water were, and they were finding fish, right? And there was 2 of them, and to get to the tide pools there, they have to expose themselves. It's about 100 feet from what would normally be the shore, and of course there's no vegetation because it's normally under the water, right? So they're fully exposed. And this is what I noticed because I really try to pay attention. They only go and try to catch fish when the tide's out at sunrise, because they're exposed, right? So they can't go in the middle of the day when there's 1,000 people walking on this trail, or there's golf balls flying all over the place. They can only go under the cloak of darkness, but they can't go in full darkness because they can't see what they're doing. So they have a really small window to have success, right? And so these coyotes, and I can't tell you whether they still do it or not, or whether they're still in this neighborhood, because I'd have to be here at the perfect time with low tide and the sunrise coming up, right? And pre-sunrise. But it always, struck me how clever is that and how adaptable, right? Like those coyotes, that's not common. Like, coyotes aren't fishermen or whatever, right? But they figured out where there's a rich source of food, how to go get the food, how to minimize risk, how to maximize the opportunity, how to time the opportunity. I just think that's so, relevant to us, somehow, somehow there's a story in there that we can all learn from. We can all maybe be more like the coyote. Think. It's like I say all the time, let's not run faster on the hamster wheel. Let's go off the hamster wheel and go a different direction. So we could be more like the coyote and figure out how to fish, something coyotes don't do, figure out how to try to do it as safely as possible. I just think that's super cool. So, July 5th, hope you had a great July 4th. It seems like a long holiday weekend. I am, in case anybody's listening to this, I'm going to roll out my podcast today at 10. And I have all sorts of neat, not surprises, because the surprise will be I probably will script the technology, and that's not a surprise. But using new technology, new stuff, 10 o'clock, if you're available, check it out. And with that, man, have a great day. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye.